When I'd play this interview for people, right away, the first question they'd ask is, what is intersex? And all I could tell them was, listen to the interview and you'll find out.
It's like supposed to protect you most in the world. The doctors and your family and your parents. They let you down, and society and the state, the government.
That's my friend Mo.
It's really maddening in that.
Maximo Mo Cortez describes himself as an intersex-bodied trans Latino man from Houston. He is an advocate for intersex and trans people's rights and visibility. Mo is a co-founder of the Houston Intersex Society and works tirelessly educating the general public about intersex and trans issues at places like colleges, universities, even med schools, law schools, and hospitals. In 2017, Mo, along with his close friend Kuma and other activists from a national intersex advocacy organization called Interact, introduced the very first known intersex protection bill in North America, where there are absolutely no intersex protection laws whatsoever. Even though the bill failed to pass in Texas, other states tried to pass similar bills because of it. All of them failed. I interviewed Mo at my house in January 2018 about his life and personal experiences as an intersex-bodied person. He starts off by talking about the intersex bill, the first of its kind. Then we get much deeper into his own surgeries, childhood, and his life experience as an intersex-bodied man. Mo is a good friend of mine. He is one of the most compassionate people I know, and a great speaker. I hope you get as much from this interview as I did. I am so grateful to be able to help him share his story. You're listening to Sounds from the Belly of the Beast.
Dos cosas ciertas son la muerte y el cambio. En la vida dos cosas ciertas son la muerte y el cambio.
So I guess we can start by introducing ourselves.
Oh yeah.
My name is V, and I am a pansexual, non-binary person who is interviewing.
I am Mo Cortez. I am an intersex trans man. Yeah.
My pronouns, I prefer it or they. What do you prefer, Mo?
Wow. I prefer he, him, and his. I feel like maybe this past decade, I feel where there's more openness. There's more people that are like willing to be trans or be a non-binary and just like live their lives. It's pretty cool. So
do you want to start talking about the bill?
Yeah. So I think in 2017, myself along with Kuma and Interact advocates, we introduced the very first intersex protection bill in Texas, but also this is the first known intersex protection bill introduced by intersex people for intersex people. There actually was a bill introduced the year prior to 2017, that's when 2016, and that was actually done by a Republican Assembly member in House Rep in Indiana, out of Mike Pence country. So
Random.
He said that his secretary had read the latest edition of the Atlantic and read a story about something happening to an intersex kid, and she basically bugged him to introduce such a bill like that.
Wow.
That was 2016. The whole development in that in November 2016. Hillary lost, and then Trump won. So basically. That was one of those fools that was very heartbroken that this evil guy had won. He's evil, but I felt kind of like it was a wake up call, because before then, I would casually look at politics, learn about things and whatnot, understand what the issues were, but I didn't feel like I was serious, So it kind of was a wake up call to say, hey, if you don't get up and stand up for your rights, or you don't fight for what you want, you're not going to get it.
Mo describes it as an epiphany. that you need to take direct action for things to get done.
And I think what kind of happened to me there was that, like, okay, I've already interviewed with different kind of media, like TV, the news, newspapers, whatever. But I think to really get the, first get the word out, but actually primarily stop these surgeries, why don't we just introduce a bill? I asked around my friends, other intersex friends across the states, and if they know of anyone who's ever introduced a bill, then no one has. No one has. No, it's like no one. It was unbelievable because, like, how could you not even conceive that? Like, it's a tactic to end something that's destructive towards people's lives. But I just thought, why am I the first person having to think of this or deal with this? So it was a wake up call in that, hey, like, it kind of attested to me that, like, we have more power than we think we do. We have the power to change the world, and that's what it was, is a moment of empowerment in that I could introduce a bill with something that as easy as basically going to a legislative town hall. That's where a couple of legislators, lawmakers were at, like Sylvia Garcia was there, Sarah Davis, Symphonia Thompson, she's a House rep, and some other person. And I basically put Sylvia Garcia on the spot, and I asked her, asked all of them actually, if they would be interested in supporting an intersex protective bill. I kind of had to break it down, which I should break it down now here in the show, because some of your listeners may not even know what intersex is. So
you're right. It didn't even occur to me. Yeah, you're totally right.
Oops, yeah. So intersex, since you may or may not be familiar with it, is whenever someone is born with an anatomical, chromosomal, or hormonal difference that falls somewhere in between what's usually considered typical for male and female. So people have heard of hermaphrodite. That's like a pejorative now, but no one's actually born with both sets of genitalia.
Mo says this begs repeating, so here it is again.
No one's actually born with both sets of genitalia. Sometimes you're not born with ovaries, or you're born with one ovary, or you're not born with a uterus, or there's various ways the human body can exist, and basically the frequency of these births. A number that's commonly thrown out there is like 1 out of every 1,000 births there's an intersex kid, but a new study coming out of Scandinavia says it's 1 out of every 250, so it's a lot higher than we're led to believe.
And 1 out of 1,000 is a lot.
I know. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, thanks for breaking that down.
Yeah. So I told them that, and then Sylvia Garcia said, "All right, I'll take a look into that, Senator Garcia." And basically, myself, along with Kuma and Interact Advocates, we got together and created some model legislation, and gave it to Sylvia Garcia, and she introduced it in March of 2017. And that was Bill SB 1342, a bill to help prevent unnecessary genital surgeries on kids born with intersex traits in the foster care system. So fast forward to today, the bill didn't pass, as we already obviously know, because submitting the bill again this session. Right now, we're kind of at at the meat and potatoes. In that, when you read legislation, it looks blah blah blah, boring, but it sounds very simple. But every little word, every little inflection, every little intent can be anything. Like you've seen these bills, like the Patriot Act, right? It's basically saying, oh, we're here, to support our country, people, we're patriots, but really they're invading our privacy. It's the stuff like that, legislators do. That you make, it sounds like a great thing, but the way they do it, it's just absolutely horrible. So what we're doing now is basically, this is part of a lessons learned, because in other parts of the world, like in Australia and I believe in Germany, parents are able to put I think what is it, intersex or an X or whatever it is, depending on which country you're talking about. And the thing with that is that even though it may look very progressive to say, hey, you can put intersex on your child's birth certificate if they're born intersex, but what the doctors do is that, first of all, they don't get that much education about intersex stuff. But secondly, what they do know is basically to normalize, to basically make things conform, right? And what they want to do is basically just basically reinforce the binary system, sex system. So I think right now we're kind of trying to figure out what's the right age for the kid to decide if they want to have the surgery or not. So what we're doing is basically postpone. So we're going to say we're going to postpone the surgery so the child's either 12 or 18 or whatever it is, or it may not even do that. That's really the question now. In that, how do you decide what age is right? Like when I was 12 years old, it wasn't the same thing as your 12-year-old, right? So other people have different experiences in life, understandings, and that's really tricky because everyone is really different. It like I said, it's up in the air because basically learning different things as we go. Like for example, with I think it's the DSHS, if I remember correctly, there is a consent form for sterilization, but it's for adults over age 21. Now that amazes me that there is a consent form to self-sterilize. That is, I don't know, that's something so dramatic, that the state has that kind of, I don't know, it's weird.
What do you mean? Remember, we're just hanging out at my house during this interview, so there's a bit of extra noise sometimes. And later you'll hear my sweet niece Lali crying in the background.
I don't know, it's weird.
What do you mean?
Like the state has that much control. I don't know. It's weird. Like, if you want to self-sterilize, do it on your own. Like, who cares? Nobody's gonna. It's like, do I have to get a thing from the government for me to get my tooth pulled? Like, no. I think that's just rather strange. Basically, so for consenting for kids, so is it without a cap? Is it basically whenever the kid is old enough to consent? So whether that's 10 years old, 15 years old, 20 years old, or is that the age caps? And if it is the age caps, we run into, like I said earlier, where people know who they are or they don't know who they are. But what is possible to happen is coercion, where they say, all right, little Sally or little Sam, you're 12 years old, you gotta make a decision for the surgery, you gotta make a decision, blah blah blah, and that's what really is the big crux of everything, is like, with the best of intentions and with all of your heart and everything, you can try to create what you think is the best bill, best legislation, and it might do the exact opposite, or someone might read it in a different way, and that's what's really scary because it's really a big task. It's really daunting, honestly.
What is in the legislature right now? Like, what laws are there as far as being intersex, especially when it comes to kids and infants and babies?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So there are no laws in all intersex, but they do have procedures in the CPS where, like for example, on my paperwork, on my records, it says these surgeries are so expensive that people aren't going to be able to afford this on their own, right? My mom's a single parent mom. She wouldn't be able to afford the surgery, so the state of Texas actually paid for this. Medicare, I believe, or Medicaid. I think it's Medicaid. And there was a coding. It says, I think, what was it, 205, indeterminate sex. So, this is this does happen, and it is commonplace. So commonplace that they even have, a coded number, a coded system for it. So, that's interesting.
So explain what is the surgery? So
the normalization surgeries, right? So, or I guess we're calling them now more intersex surgeries, because normalization sounds like you're trying to normalize something that's abnormal. But if you say intersex surgery, or like surgeries on intersex people, so what that could look like for several people, like if they determine that you should be a boy, whatever, like if you have large breast tissue, they'll say like you need to get rid of that, whatnot, or if you're or if your parents want to decide to basically gender you as a girl.
And we're talking about like when someone is an infant. It's
either an infant or like or a young kid, or even as a teenager. Really, it's anywhere from birth all the way to adulthood, really. And some of these surgeries, like some people have genital surgery. So if they're born with ambiguous genitalia and their body isn't responsive to testosterone, basically, if they determine that you should be that you're not. You don't have enough characteristics, you don't measure up to be a male, then they'll make you a female. So what basically their rationale is that nurture is greater than nature. So
is that how they like determine it? Is if you don't pass these things to be male, all these female? So all these different tests they do, different kind of tests, and just and a lot of it, I mean, it's just looking at the kids' genitals. Like this is just ridiculous. Like, why are we looking at baby's genitals? Like, if the baby is not dying, or if it's not something life-threatening, then it doesn't matter,
that's what we're trying to get people to understand is that like just let people be. So
Do you talk to a lot of parents doing the work that you do?
not many, but I do encounter them. I also have like an online Facebook group. It's like a secret group for the intersex people that I know around the world. And I founded that group about 7 years ago, and basically I want to say like maybe about 5 to 6 kids basically have been saved because parents they went online, they googled it, and they saw, all right, they find the group, and like they're basically met with other parents there too, and there's doctors. The group is open to everybody that's a stakeholder in the intersex person's life. So whether it's their dentist, their doctor, their spouse, whatever, they're allowed in the group, and that's what's really been a really good thing about having groups like that, because in the past, uh, groups have been formed around intersex people. There's about 30 different kind of intersex conditions that are known out there that are actually like recorded, and um basically these groups will basically be diagnosis affiliated groups and divided by gender. So like AIS DSD was predominantly the androgen sensitivity syndrome, disorder of sexual development. That's a word that they use to describe intersex, but that's really kind of like a pathologization of intersex. It's basically trying to reclaiming the narrative.
Okay.
Basically, a group for white females that they're females, through and through, but they have XY chromosomes and they have testes instead of ovaries, and they don't have a uterus. So AIS women had their own group, which was AIS DSD women's group, and then there's also a group for like CAH people. But basically, none of these groups would talk to one another. So that's what it is about that group that I formed. It was basically open to everybody that's involved in the person's life. So, and that's kind of why I formed the group too, because I was a part of the AIS group, but they had an email circle. Back in the day when people used like Yahoo listservs, to do little emails, and it was pretty much, this is just Betty Crockers. Really, they were all just Betty Crockers, like people I could not relate to. I didn't feel like I was female. I felt male since I ever could think of a self concept, and I felt like such an outsider that I left the group. I told everybody else, like, I'm gone. This is for women. I'm out, and I felt developed that group in Facebook, and about a couple years later, the AIS women's group ended up being the AIS DSD family support group. So basically, I'm not taking claim to say that I did that. I didn't do any of that, but maybe I sparked the idea, maybe the concept of change. I don't know, maybe so, but more inclusive. And I guess my personal story, like, so when I was born with ambiguous genitals and also with a hole in my heart. So they wanted to actually, they didn't even notice the hole in my heart right away. All they saw was the ambiguous genitals, and they wanted to operate right away. And they did, a couple of labs. They're like, oh, well, your child has a hole in the heart, so we can't do the genital surgery because your kid has zero. And they pretty much they just socialize me as female, but so basically they close up. They socialize me as female. That's how my upbringing was. But yeah, so they closed up the hole and they left me alone. And basically when I was 5 years old, someone turned my mom into the CPS, saying that she was raising a little boy as a girl. So that's when the state intervened. They said, all right, well,
so was it a family member or something?
It could have been. I really don't know. I have my suspicions, but it could have been anybody, really, if you think about it. I'm from San Angelo. It's a small town of 88,000 people. So out in Midwest Texas.
But that's such a weird, claim to make to CPS, and also for them to even pick that up.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's exactly right. As crazy as it sounds, it did work. So they basically just. I mean, I asked my siblings and my mom, if they remember anything. They don't, obviously. But I feel like my mom was coerced. Single parent mother. She had seizures and epilepsy. And just raising me alone, and it was rough. It was rough for her. So she basically said, "All right, well, I'll consent to this surgery because she probably was afraid of losing me. Yeah, I scared whatever went out. So yeah, so that happened, and then so I was brought up in a Mormon church. So like everything I knew was like hardline and binary, but it was crazy because it didn't take long for me to figure out, as a little kid, like this religion is, this is baloney, it's not real. It's not, I mean, it's a cult.
So when you were born, they didn't do any surgery because of the hole in your heart.
Exactly, because I would have died.
So then, until you were 5.
Yeah.
5 is when you had your first surgery.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So the surgery.
So did they gendered you though from 1 to 5?
Yeah, they gendered me as female just as a default. That's pretty much what they usually do.
And then at 5, you had a surgery to make you female. Like what?
So since I was born with mixed genitals, they basically, so there's a couple different words that are out there, terms that I don't know. They're like clitorectomy, but also phallectomy, where they're basically a procedure to chop off a penis. So they did the phallectomy, and they did a gonadectomy, so they took out my testes. So, and they didn't know if I had like a testy or like a streak ovary, but when they took them out, they were both testes, so there was no question about that. So, and one of the big issues of these surgeries is that, well, first of all, they're working on somebody's body without their consent, right? And they're forcing something on them, but this is basically, it does damage. It does real damage. Like I've seen a couple studies lately that if you give a kid under 5 years old anesthesia, they have brain damage, that like learning impairments, not major ones, but they do have enough to cause an issue. And just think about it, like the quality of a life, like of an older woman once she gets like a full hysterectomy, so no uterus, the ovaries are all gone, right? So she has to take exogenous, so she has to take artificial hormones. So she went from having a customized internal system to create its own kind of hormones and the right dosage of the right amount, for the body, because it's in equilibrium, to some synthetic stuff that they use as a one-size-fits-all. So what I'm trying to say here is that the quality of life for a lot of those people goes drastically down. Like things from having just like depression and whatnot. So, and other things such as joint pain, osteoporosis, osteopenia for some people. And then some of these surgeries, like some like if it's I guess hypospadias, where the hole is on the base of the penis instead of on the head for I guess to pee. Scar tissue tears too. So it's never really just one surgery, and just the portrayal, like the people that are supposed to protect you most in the world, the doctors and your family and your parents, they let you down, and society and the state, the government, it's really maddening in that. Yeah. It's so unbelievable, but it's true, a fact is more stranger than fiction,
Do you remember at all the surgery?
So I remember I actually was interviewed by Human Rights Watch, and they actually released a report last July 2017, where they interviewed intersex adults all over the nation and whatnot, and asked about the quality of life. And so as I told them that my youngest, I guess earliest memory I remember, I was in Dallas. I always say forget Dallas, but the other F word. But it was in Dallas. But so I was basically in the hospital, and I remember I was laying on the hospital bed, and I lifted the sheet. I could feel something like, I don't know, like just tingly, and I saw like there was a giant like red X like in my groin area. That's where they done the clitorectomy or the phallectomy, whichever one you call it. And it was just like my body was so bad, so strange, so queer that they had to chop it up. They had to make it conform to some standard. Like what is the standard for genitalia like that on a little kid? it's whatever they make up, and it's really sickening, really, because like whenever a child molester molests a kid, they go to jail, whatever, right? Now, when a doctor basically chops up the genitals of a kid, and later and after the surgeries, they use actual like sex toys on the kid to make sure there's functionality for the organs. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
What?
Yeah, yeah. They use vibrators, yeah, on kids' junk to make sure their things work. Well, to make sure that things work, quote unquote. And it's really sick because
To this day, they do that.
well, that's how they. That's
Oh my
from what we've been
God.
told. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's
That's up.
yeah. So, and nothing happens to the doctors. Like the doctors, they get their check and they go about their days and their lives, and they have every incentive. These surgeons have every incentive not to stop the surgeries because they're collecting a check, a guaranteed check. And what I mean by guaranteed is that like if the parents can't afford it, like I said earlier, the state will pay for it. So, and that's what we're trying to do with the bill is basically trying to reverse engineer the process they do that to kids so that we can kind of have those surgeries, unnecessary surgery stops, and let the kid make their own decision for surgery, and to kind of just you know basically put a dent in their process, make it harder to do.
Why is it guaranteed that the state will pay for it? Is it because it's a child?
Well, it's because it's a medical ailment. It's a disease, something they need to fix in the body. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so right off, from birth, we're pathologized, and yeah, it's really what it is. And some people have been lucky enough where they have actually, slipped through the surgeon's scalpel where they didn't even have to have it, or their parents fought off or sued enough times, or they got up and just moved to a new city where nobody knew them, so it was never a problem. But so the people that were never touched, their body is weird and queer and different, but they're absolutely content,
What do you mean their parents sued enough time?
Or, they either sue the doctors, you know what I mean? Because doctors can say, oh, well, you're putting your child into danger, so, we're used to stay. And they're like, oh, we'll sue you if you, whatever it is. So just different scenarios. I'm just trying to queue up there.
Do you talk to your mom about it?
My mom crashes every time. She just turns catatonic, really. It's really hard for her to really process. And my sister, she's very, I don't know, just I guess remorseful in that, like, she wasn't maybe like 18, but even then, it's like something happening to your little brother or little sister, like something irreversible, like especially irreversible genital surgeries. That's pretty crazy. And it's brought a special shame to my family. Well, the nuclear, but also the extended family, in that it's like all of my aunts and my uncles, and my cousins, interacted a lot, had a lot of parties together, a lot of festivals and whatnot. And when it comes to my family, we were often not invited to things. I don't know if that was because of either my mom or maybe because of me, but I don't know. But it was like something shameful, actually. And I remember one of my cousins, taunting me one time, saying that, "Oh, I heard you something. You're born weird or whatever." I was like, I was really pissed. I'm like, I think I was actually in high school, so I understood at the surface level, like something was weird about my body, but then to have like someone, a family member call me a freak, that was really just, it hurt a lot. It hurt a lot. Yeah. And it was actually funny because, so I guess I had those surgeries when I was 5, and then pretty much was, I guess, consider myself lesbian because I was socialized as female. And then when I was 18, actually, I got my records, some of them, and I looked at some of the words. I saw male pseudo hermaphrodite, and I slammed the book closed. And it was really overwhelming because here I am, feeling and knowing I was always a boy, but then living like this fake life. It was really it was crazy because what those records did to me was the proof to say, hey, no, you were born different and it's okay or whatever. It's just it. I tried to live the narrative they wanted me to live, but I couldn't do it. So, well, not till like age 30. That's when I decided to transition to male. But like some of my friends, with his records, he found medical photography. So, when it's medical photography, basically, these doctors are, doing, I guess putting kids into stirrups, little kids, little kids. And, and with some of these, like they had to restrain the kids with straps, whatever. Or, just to do some kind of, a test on them or whatnot, or just, know what their anatomy is. And that's like seeing pictures of that, that's just really sickening. So yeah. And that's another reason why, I know I have more records. I have pathology reports I need to get from Dallas, but just thinking about his situation, and then I saw a film called Both, where a woman had seen her records, whatever, and she went crazy. But yeah, I don't want to see those pictures if they're there, because if they're there, that means, well, I blocked it out of my mind so much that I can't even remember, and plus that's just sickening, sickening.
Really up, I don't have a word.
Yeah, it is. And what's funny, going a little bit back on the bill, when I was lobbying for it in 2017, I talked to Republicans and Democrats. I'm a Democrat, but especially talk to Republicans because a lot of Texas is Republican, and I found it as a Republican, but that's how you kind of build a bridge, because you have to go into those spaces where you're uncomfortable, because there's probably someone who needs help, either that the kid is intersex or they just had a baby that's intersex, and they won't know. If you only stick to a certain type of people, you won't be able to let everybody else know. So some of it's about that. So as I was saying, so I told a lot of staffers of Democratic legislators about my story, and it was actually a Republican. It was actually a staffer of Senator Colcourse. She's the one that brought up the bathroom bill, the draft of that.
He's talking about the wave of bathroom bills starting in North Carolina in 2016 that has stopped trans folks from using the bathroom of their gender.
Of Senator Colcourse. She's the one that brought up the bathroom bill, the draft of that, who said, I'm sorry they did that to you, like an actual apology. And it was a guy too, so a white guy, right? And I was like, wow, that's amazing. I should have played Lotto that day. But he apologized, so it meant a lot. I kind of like laughed it off, when he said it or whatever. But it really like struck me later on that day. I'm like, wow, like the people we think are the most evil, can see, and that's what really kind of motivated me to keep on lobbying, because even the people we think are our enemies, need the help and they want to help. So that's really what it's about.
I don't have any faith in our government or the legislative system or any of that. So how do you, and I know we, think similarly about that. So how do you what's the word? Come to terms with that?
I am skeptical AF, but a lot of it's also, even if the bill doesn't pass again this session, it's basically going to be able to, we're going to basically be able to create more awareness about this. And that's what it's about. It's all about fighting for the kids. That's really what it is about. So I'm a true believer of the people, in that, like, once we once the people culturally catch up to who intersex people are and what we're about, there is definitely going to be a push to hopefully stop them, from the people. And that's really what I want, is to motivate the people to take charge.
Tell me about Kuma if you want to.
Oh yeah, so he's my homie. He's been my homie for a minute. We actually met through an organization that met up every Friday night after school. Like, I guess during summers during high school. At a after school LGBTQ support group. So basically everyone that's 21 years old and younger. So there's like a hangout spot for all these kids, LGBTQ kids. And, it's funny is that like, he was just a gay boy and I was just a lesbian. And like we sat together as friends, for all those years and whatnot. And, anyway, and I didn't see Kuma again. Because, you just see people at events or whatever. You don't think to, this is the days before Facebook, right? So you don't have a way to stalk people. But, whatchamacallit, so yeah, I lost touch with him. And then about 2012, Facebook has this thing where it says people you may know, a little feature, right? I'll say, oh, that's Kuma, I know him. And then he talked about something intersex. I'm like, wait, like, you're telling me you're intersex? And like, yeah, like, oh yeah, me too. Like, what the hell? Like, and that very day we actually created the Houston Intersex Society, which we created we created this to support local intersex people here in Houston. And for about was it a year and a half, the first 2 years, no one ever showed up for the meeting unless we actually brought someone with us or whatever, or asked people to come out. So we shifted gears with the organization and decided to be an educational organization. So no, we didn't decide. That's just how it organically happened. We're like, hey, can you all speak about intersex over here, over there? So we founded that in 2012. So it's 2019. It's about 7 years old organization as of this June. It's time flies, time really does fly. So,
do you want to talk about coming out as a man?
I remember being 5 years old. Like, I think it was probably after my surgery, but like, just thinking, like wishing upon a star, like, I wish I was a boy, or, I should go back to being a real boy. Like Pinocchio really hits a soft note for me because, like, he's this wedding little toy, and then he asked to be a little, a flesh kid and whatever. And that, like, that's how I felt, like, kind of like an imposter in that, like, I felt an imposter as even in my female form, and that, like, I know I'm not really female, but I'm doing this because this is what it's expected of me. And then, so when it ended up happening is that, like, I lived my life, and then I got to a point in my life where I was like, it felt like a lie, like I couldn't like keep up with this charade and with this female form because I felt like, it was a lie, which it was. And I thought like, well, this persona, Mo 1.0, Mo 2.0, right? Mo 1.0 was gonna die one way or another. Like, I was crying like that because it was just, it was old, I was getting old, because I couldn't be who I wanted to be, and people couldn't see who I was. They would look at me as what I was then, the female form. And so I asked my doctor, like, hey, can I start taking testosterone? And then I got like androgel, which is like a topical testosterone and a gel, and it felt good, but my body is from what I can tell Americans, I have partial androgen insensitivity syndrome. So my body is like partially can process androgens like testosterone, so not fully. So what I did, I went back and I got intramuscular testosterone, which is testosterone cypionate, and started doing shots on my legs, and I started getting changes. Voice started deepening and whatnot, and that's when I kind of felt just more authentically me. So, and but it was really scary, honestly. It was really scary in that, when you're transitioning, whether you're going male to female or female to male, there's this weird place where you're in the middle. For some of us, it's weird for us to be in the middle. Not everybody, I know. And, the most craziest thing that happened to me was I was yelled out of a women's restroom, because I was transitioning, whatever, still. But I had gotten a ticket, so I went to the restroom at the court, and my rationale was like, oh, I look like a male, but my ID says female, so I'm thinking of bathroom laws, even before these were on a thing that actually happened. And I went into the women's restroom, and then the woman's like, "This is a ladies' room," like get out of here. So she hollered me out of the restroom, which was I laugh at it now, but then I was like, oh god, let me get out of here because a man coming out of a woman's restroom and or a male appearing looking person coming out of the woman's restroom, that does make some people on edge. I mean, especially being in a courthouse where there's a bunch of police, that's something you wanted to have to worry about. But other than that, everything else was good. Yeah, it was really cool to transition. Well, I mean, I guess I still am now. I'm actually trying to fundraise for my top surgery, but that's taking a little bit of time. Just student loans, credit card debt. It's really hard to save up the money, honestly. So yeah.
How much does it cost?
It's like, well, I got a quote for a doctor up in Dallas area. It was like for $6,700, which that's not bad, but if you don't have $1,600 to $700, you don't have that $6,700.
Yeah, that's a lot of money. That's not as much as I thought you were gonna say, but that is a crap ton of money. And
there's a doctor here in Houston it's $10,000, which I'd rather stay in Houston, but the one in Dallas, he's better than that. He does free revision, so like. So if you need to alter your chest or whatever or whatnot, he'll do it for free. So that's kind of the incentive there and that also buys into my cynicism, I guess is that what it's called, where like or skepticism, where like I know something's gonna fail, at least someone's gonna be able to fix it, so whatnot. So.
You said at least something's gonna feel like it's not gonna be perfect surgery or something like that.
Yeah, or something. Who knows?
Skepticism,
yeah.
pessimist.
Yeah, yeah. That's my natural state though. So, but it's also I would say optimistic as well. It's like I feel that's the one weird thing about me is that like I feel like I'm very pessimistic, but also optimistic. And that like who would knowingly keep trying to lobby for this intersex bill when nobody knows anything about intersex, nobody seems to care about it, or there's not any money behind it, right? Like the LGBT movement has. There's plenty of money there, and there's just a steep mountain, Mount Everest of not only do you have to educate the people around you, but you have to educate your own doctors. Even when you go, even for something as simple as getting cough medication, you have to talk about your medical history and whatnot. So yeah.
So do you find that happens a lot, right? You educating your doctors, and you've just expressed a few times that doctors really don't know a lot about.
Oh yeah, definitely not. Oh yeah. Yeah. So even an OBGYN that I interviewed me a couple weeks ago, I had a discussion with her, and she had like literally no information. She had like she'll say testicular feminization and male pseudohermaphroditism, and that was just like wow, those are ancient terms. No one uses that stuff. Those are antiquated. So yeah, and what's really frustrating about it is that like I'm paying doctors to help me, but I'm educating them, so they should be paying me. So, and that's really what's really annoying is that
frustrating.
Yeah, like why do I even see you? But it's for medication or whatever.
There are some outdated terms that, like, you shouldn't call it people anymore.
Also, intersex,
and maybe there's some words that people just don't know that you should know.
I would say just don't use hermaphrodite. Because people have an image pops into people's mind, and it's usually it's that is real for them because that's a reality. That's all they know. So that's real for them. So not to use that, and just use intersex, and don't use this DSD, disorders of sexual development, or differences of sexual development. Is basically the medical community trying to take over the intersex narrative. It's kind of hard to kind of describe that really, without going into a lot of history, but basically, I don't know, just terminology. You call one thing one thing, and it's totally somewhere else. But they just basically kind of dilute it because it would include people that are not really intersex too. So people with disorders of sexual development. So anything that someone has different on their body in regards to sexual development, like there's people with micropenises that intersex. Like it is it's a difference of sexual development, but it's not intersex unless there's hypospadias and whatnot. And I'm not a medical professional, so this is not written in stone. So you got Google if you need information. But
that's good advice.
But yeah, and that's one thing too that I always tell parents is that Google's your friend, and also try to get help from support groups, because that's really how you're going to get through it all. Because these doctors are going to shock and awe you and scare you and gloom and doom you and just say, hey, do these surgeries, or your kid's gonna be messed up. You want them to have a normal life, right? You want them to have a normal life, so it's those intimidation tactics that helps people to say, hey, I don't care. No is no, and basically just kind of building a positive reinforcement to say, hey, you know what? My kid didn't have the surgery and they're okay. Or like, my kid did have the surgery and I feel remorseful about it. I feel guilty because I didn't know. The doctors made me believe it was the right thing to do and it wasn't. So stuff like that. So that's like what my mom feels like. She doesn't say it, but I can, and putting myself in her shoes, I would have done the same thing, because what are you going to do? If the state tells you, to do something, you just do it. Especially if you're like a woman of color and Latina, so.
We're almost at an hour. Do you want to keep talking, or do you want to do some wrap-up questions? And we can always interview again.
We can do wrap-up questions, yeah.
Okay. I really could talk to you all night. And you're just nice to talk to.
Oh, thanks, you too.
So, what are some places that people listening right now can get resources, perhaps if they're intersex, or maybe if they just want to
learn more information,
and be a better person?
I would say locally, check out the Houston Intersex Society on Facebook, where we have a lot of news and information. Plus, you can also reach out to us on the messenger, so we actually are pretty responsive to that. But if you're outside of Houston and you want to learn more about intersex and whatnot, I would say look up the Human Rights Watch Intersex report released in 2017 to learn all about intersex. And then you can also reach out to the intersex advocacy group, Interact Advocates, and they have a lot of good pamphlets that say something like what we wish our parents knew, what we wish our doctors knew, what we wish our friends knew. So they have a lot of those little self-help things, and also like just great tips and great information too.
Is there anything we haven't covered or anything you want to add?
Don't chop up kids' genitals. Say no to normalization surgeries. Oh, there's so much more. So much more I could say. Right off the top of my head, I would say no, not right now. But I just basically people seeing intersex people as just a variation, of just everybody, intersex people all over the world. We've always been here. We always will be here. So.
You've been listening to Sounds from the Belly of the Beast. This is V. Patel Adams signing off, reminding everyone out there, don't hate the media, be the media. Peace.